This isn't sinking?
It's got the flash in it. Let's see if it's, it's going?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Thank you, sir.
Oh. I hope it's good.
Let's stay up here. So it's cold as I thought it was gonna be.
Did you help out on the Formosa audits? And Point Comfort? Zach in the back, he's from that side.
Hi. Yeah. I think I did. Yeah, I was actually just talking about this morning, Anna and Heather. There's, they asked how I got chose to go to, Hawaii. I think it just made sense to decide. They were like, well, why didn't Carl just go? I was like, because that makes money.
For Carl to go?
They were like, why didn't Carl or Jeff or somebody go instead of you? And I said, I think that they were trying to.
No, it's that,
You're the auditor, you're the field. I mean,
number one, it's,
Carl hasn't seen the inside of the unit since he was in, what, 10 years ago.
yeah.
Being facetious. I'm sure he could figure it out, but
No, but yeah,
how wrong would that be?
yeah, he should, he hasn't done,
Hey, congratulations, you're gonna do all of our field audits, except that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, yeah. Tell me that. That, when I worked at my previous company, you know, I ran all the database stuff, right? Well, the Inspection Logic Conference is in Orlando every year, so guess who didn't get to go? I didn't get to go to that till I came here.
Why? Or what was it?
Because it was Orlando. And, you know, UPs.
no,
Like the family.
that was a small audience right there.
Really short petition.
Huh?
Nah.
I got lucky, I got to do the audit
Yeah, you did it from home.
Sunny Week City, Texas. Still got to finish it.
I did my,
Four straight.
travel verification today. It took me almost 30 minutes. They had so many questions.
Oh, well.
What is the address of your hotel? What's the address of your house? What's your telephone number? Verify your telephone. I mean, it was just like all kinds of stuff.
Got a little personal.
It is.
What was the name of your first boyfriend?
They even asked what room number the hotel. I'm like, they don't give you that number before, you know, that's usually assigned.
You're on that, crap.
I didn't put nothing, but I mean, it's that, I was like, they wanted to know exactly like what plane number, what kind of
There's no
ride.
regulation.
It's crazy.
Probably is, but no, like not.
I assume.
Yeah, because again, we already know that there's drones.
Yeah, I haven't been doing much nothing for the last week. I think because I knew I was supposed to be traveling for a few weeks, so I was like, okay. I've been working out though, just running a mile here and there.
Well, next week, your little jogging. Why?
I won't jog.
And you'll have a running buddy. So listen.
Can't keep up with her, I'm sure. Oh,
Yeah, she
I used to,
she definitely has some awareness.
I used to cook, but not anymore. I was actually reading the old message that I somebody was saying, I was trying to move with them to run a 21, and I was, I haven't run a 21 this
So we gotta
year.
look into
I was
it.
like, I might slow down towards the end, and be, slower than a 10-minute pace, you know? I can barely run a mile.
Oh, yeah, same.
It's crazy how you can do that and then go so
Yeah.
far
My
back.
advice would be don't completely stop because
Yeah.
and
I did that, but it's gotten like smaller and smaller, like I went down to like 2 miles, 3 miles, and now I'm like, well, just run a mile, at least you do something.
yeah, I bought a road bike. So I haven't ridden it much.
I will say that I can go even a couple months without running and still like at least be able to run 3 miles.
When I was in high school, and out of high school, we would take the hottest part of the summers off. Or no, the coldest part of the winters. And we'd be able to get right back into it.
Yeah, because I can at least always pull off a 3 miler, 4 miler.
I feel like if I had somebody chasing me, I'd do a lot. But after that, it's probably like,
That's how big he is.
yeah.
I didn't say I would do it fast. I can do it all.
And your P equals your fast pace.
From 1 mile or from like a few miles.
Say you're gonna do 10K.
I can do like 8 miles.
That's fast. Yeah.
They probably don't do miles.
That's pretty good.
I was pretty good for a while. Not anymore.
That's pretty respectable for one.
I got really good.
For 6 straight, that's,
That's real good.
you've been your third or fourth
Well,
one.
that's what I was telling him. I saw the messages that I was messaging as well, and I was, I said I hadn't ran 20 miles this year. I said after about 15 miles, I'll probably slow down, over a 10-minute pace. So I was
Yeah.
hoping for 15 miles, I could hold a 10-minute pace.
That 10 minutes was our goal, so we're gonna do more than 10.
And I got good fast. Like I just started running and got that way like in a year.
That's a beautiful thing about
I've been doing
anybody.
that my whole life. I probably would have been really good.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's really good. We burn fat for sure.
I had buddies in high school that got scholarship offers to go run cross country. College, of course.
It was because I was in that running club though, because I was trying to keep up with them.
Yeah.
It wasn't-
Well, that's the thing. I mean, running with people faster
Yeah.
than you or riding with people faster than you, it definitely helps.
I remember I would feel at first, it would be like, I could only keep up with like 2 miles and then I'd start. And then it'd be 3 or 4 miles. And then,
You kind of settle.
because you don't want to leave, you know, you're like, God, you're.
And they both ended up going to West Point, but when we were in high school, they would run with them and they would sing in Spanish. Like, you know, kind of stuff, woman from Guantanamo Bay. I felt like I knew the words in Spanish for a while.
We would talk for the whole 15 miles. 20
Yeah,
miles.
I can't talk like that. Can't do that now.
Sometimes I would get winded and I would have to like listen for a bit, you know, but for the most part. I couldn't if I was running full speed.
Oh, sure.
It's 5 after. Should we get going?
Sure.
Nope.
Looks like it's pretty hot, so.
Yeah. Hey, good morning. So it looks like we got a small group today. Just wanted to kind of kick off a couple things real quick. So my name is Jeff Deal. I'm with Think Environmental and got a couple of other Think people in the room specifically to help out with talking about the LDAR program piece. So I got Sean Hardy, who's been doing LDAR for about 25 years now. Marty Shattuck, who's our West Texas manager and been doing this for what, about 15 years? 18, oh my goodness. Michael Hauk, who's our database guy. And Letitia is, she doesn't do a lot with Quad OA. She's got one Quad OA program, but just one of our great supervisors and just wanted to attend the class. So again, I know you guys, are you both with FPC? Okay, so I'm glad you're here. I don't think you do much with Quad OA. You do some quad O? Okay. Okay, good. And then our friend from Trihydro. So you can probably jump in and help teach the class. So I just want to, make it clear. We're not going to come here and talk a lot about the regulations, right? We're just talking about executing an LDAR program. And we're not going to get into a whole lot of detail on potential changes that are coming up. So what we are going to focus on is really just kind of the day-to-day implementation of a quad O LDAR program. And again, when you talk about quad O, right, there is you do have two different methodologies in terms of your traditional Method 21 program as well as an OGI program. So we'll talk about a couple of the differences, but we're not here to try and sway anybody one way or the other. We manage programs with both, as I imagine Trihydro does as well, and there are definitely pros and cons to each, but we're not here to try to convince anybody of one or the other. It's not showing up on here. Okay, so we'll just touch quickly on the regulation itself. We'll talk some about midstream versus upstream programs. Again, we'll talk about Method 21 versus optical gas imaging with different equipment options. Talk a little bit about the written LDAR plan and talk some about record keeping. Okay. So for those that are working in the Quad OA area, a lot of it is in areas like West Texas and other dry areas throughout the country. So you get some interesting experiences being out there. So whether it's a snake, tarantulas, or goats, that's a fun one too. Get to see it all. Marty can attest to it. He's probably seen even more interesting stuff, but it definitely keeps it interesting. Very different than being in a Formosa plant in Point Comfort, where you've got fence lines and I know you see probably gators and some other interesting creatures there as well, but West Texas, it's got its own set of challenges. Okay. Why it's not keeping up on here. Okay, so very quickly, the Quad OA regulation establishes emission standards and compliance schedules for the control of greenhouse gases. It affects facilities newly constructed as well as modified or reconstructed after that September 2015 date. And it applies to basically this list of equipment highlighted. So hydraulically fractured wells at oil wells and gas wells, reciprocating and centrifugal compressors, fugitive equipment leaks, pneumatic controllers and pumps, crude oil condensate, and produced water storage tanks. From an equipment list standpoint, valves, connectors, PRVs, open-ended lines, flanges, compressors, instruments, meters, and thief hatches and other covers on closed vent systems. on the midstream side, from a general requirements of frequency, the monitoring requirements are monthly pumps, quarterly valves, annual flanges and connectors. Right? And repair requirements are first attempts must be made within 5 days. Final repairs must be made within 15 days. And a component can only go on DOR if a repair cannot be made within the 15 days due to technical infeasibility or unsafe, the ability to repair it safely without a unit shutdown or isolation of that equipment. And the repair must occur during the next process unit shutdown and monitored to verify the repair within 15 days of startup. On the midstream side, waterway requirements for valves, so must be monitored within 30 days after the end of a startup period. New valves must be monitored consecutively for 2 months, and then they move to quarterly monitoring thereafter. Leak definition for valves is 500 ppm, and it's got the 515 repair requirements. And we've got a 3% DTM limit, so cannot exceed that 3% DTM limit. And on the pump side, must be monitored within 30 days after the end of the startup period. Monitored monthly, 2000 ppm leak definition with the 515 leak repair requirement. Weekly visual inspections and exemptions for pumps equipped with dual mechanical seal systems. Okay, so other quad-away requirements to be aware of: initial inspection on CVS components and visual inspections following annually. So have to be monitored once and then move to visual inspection thereafter. Each sampling system shall be equipped with the closed purge, closed loop, or closed vent system. Each open-ended line shall be equipped with a cap, line flange plug, or second valve, except for vacuum service. And heavy liquid components must be eliminated. Heavy equipment leaks must be eliminated no later than 15 days. Okay, and valve connectors and pumps that are on DOR and in service are considered repaired if monitored 2 consecutive months with below the leak definition. If you've got any questions, comments, please jump in, okay? I apologize, haven't seen. Okay. Okay, so on the upstream side, fugitive emissions, any visible emission from a FE component observed using OGI or an instrument reading of 500 ppm or greater using method 21. And an FE component is any component that has the potential to emit fugitive emissions of methane or VOC at well sites or compressor stations, including but not limited to valves, connectors, PRDs, open-ended lines, flanges, covers, closed vent systems not subject to that particular citation, thief hatches and other openings on controlled storage vessels not subject, and then compressors, instruments, and meters. Okay. Again, on the upstream side, devices that vent as part of normal operations, such as gas-driven pneumatic controllers, natural gas-driven pneumatic controllers or natural gas-driven pumps are not fugitive emissions components. And so far as the natural gas discharge from the device's vent is not considered a fugitive emission. Emissions originating from other than the vent, such as thief hatch on a controlled storage vessel, would be considered fugitive emissions. Okay, so again, on the upstream side, well sites, semi-annual inspections of all LDAR applicable components. Surveys must be conducted at least 4 months apart. On compressor stations, I believe we're back to the quarterly, or is that now? Yeah, so it is back to quarterly. I knew all of our clients are back to quarterly. Wasn't sure if it was third quarter or fourth quarter, but we're already doing it quarterly for everybody. And surveys must be conducted 60 days apart. Repairs must be made within 30 days. Repaired components also must be resurveyed within the 30 days of repair. And DORs are only allowed if repair is infeasible or unsafe without shutdown. So you'll see a lot of clients looking for other reasons, like don't have parts, and that is not a valid reason. It's got to either be due to infeasibility or a safety issue. And repairs must occur during the next, DOR repairs must occur during the next shutdown, and repaired or replaced components resurveyed within 30 days of that repair or replacement. Any questions, comments?
I have a question.
Sure.
I was still focused on Marty, because I was getting confused about the hatch.
Thief hatches.
The thief hatches, because 1 minute you said, they didn't even monitor them, the next they didn't. So where's the line control?
So here's the difference. There's two differences. First one is called a midstream. This is upstream. That's one. And second being talking about a few packs or tank that's in it that has a ventilation system. So it's got a DRU where it's fitted to a flare, but then that few patch is going to be in upstream side or the micro system. There's no DRU. Now we've seen DRUs, small ones that are controlling the problem. Tanks. At that point, if it's got a DRU, it's going to be in the system, even at enough. Now, and one thing I do want to add, I think, and Sean, maybe you can correct me, but I know Maria has pinpointed this in some of the DOR. It would create more emissions to purge it and repair it than it would be to wait until the next shutdown. So they actually do use that as a reason. Now, I know that
Yeah,
conversation.
a lot of customers want to view general emissions as a shutdown reason, just because all the work is calculating the amount of emissions that would go into the atmosphere, right? So try to stay away from that one, but we do have customers.
Okay, again, on the upstream side of well site is one or more surface sites that are constructed for the drilling and subsequent operation of any oil well, natural gas well, or injection well. This includes a separate tank battery surface site collecting crude oil, condensate, intermediate hydrocarbon liquids, or produced water from wells not located at the well site. So an example is a centralized tank battery. Well site modification occurs when either a new well is drilled at your existing well site, a well at your existing well site is hydraulically fractured, or a well at your existing well site is hydraulically refractured. Okay, compressor station is a site that has any permanent combination of one or more compressors that move natural gas gas at increased pressure through gathering or transmission pipelines or into or out of storage. Compressor stations are typically called gathering and boosting, transmission, or storage compressor stations. Compressor station modification occurs when an additional compressor is installed at a compressor station or when one or more compressors are replaced by compressors with a greater horsepower. If one or more compressors are replaced with compressors with equal or less horsepower, then installation of compressors does not necessarily trigger modification. Okay, so jumping into method 21 versus optical gas imaging. So again, there's a lot of trade-offs, and this is where there's a lot of different opinions as to what the more effective route to go is. So it's really, again, we're not here to sell one or the other or even convince you necessarily that one or the other is better. We're just kind of here to talk through them and honestly would love to hear other opinions on this topic. So method 21, typically, at least in this space, it's done by FIDs, including Thermos, TVA, LDAR2's Phoenix 42. There's other devices out there as well. And the defined leak threshold on a FID instrument is typically 500 ppm. Okay, pros of a method 21 program. Calculates and provides real-time leak concentrations, ability to detect smaller leaks, typically less expensive equipment, and surveys are typically less affected by environmental conditions. I'll talk a little bit about that when we get to the camera side. Okay, the cons on a method for a method 21 program: increased time on tools. So again, you're monitoring every component with an analyzer, and so it takes more manpower, more hours to do that work than doing a similar survey would take with a camera. It's also restricted to LDAR applicable components, so that in just the terms of fulfilling the needs of your LDAR program, that's fine. But the nice thing about being able to be out there with a camera is that you're going to catch non-LDAR leaks as well. And so from a big picture, that's a good thing, right? Because I know a lot of us, especially companies out in West Texas and other remote areas, and I think even more frequently now here in the Houston area, get a lot of flyovers, TCQ flyovers, and other agency flyovers, and so they're looking for leaks that may or may not necessarily be LDAR leaks, but you're going to see that with a camera that you may not catch it with a TVA or an analyzer if it's not, number one, if the component's not in the program, or number two, based on the frequencies, right? You may monitor a connector once annually. So if you monitor that connector in December and it's leaking in March, it could potentially leak for 9 months before you monitor that component again. Okay, typically you're going to find a higher number of leaks using method 21 because you're going to identify smaller leaks. So again, that's a pro and a con. And then health considerations, safety considerations. So with method 21, obviously you've got technicians that are much closer to the equipment. It requires them to be at every component in an LDAR program. So there are definitely increased safety and health concerns with method 21. Questions, comments? Okay, OGI. So optical gas imaging is conducted with an infrared camera. Your two prime, well, there's multiple cameras out there now. Your two big ones are really the FLIR GF series and the OpGal IC gas product. Again, there are other ones. With OGI, there's no defined leak threshold. It's basically what you see with that camera is what is defined as a leak. So you either see it or you don't see it. Okay. Pros of an optical gas imaging program. Increased monitoring distance. So again, you're not having to be on top of every piece of equipment, every component. And it does allow you to kind of step back and see the big picture. So you will typically find some leaks with that camera that you're not going to necessarily find with an analyzer. Because you're able to do more, again, you're not having to touch every component. You can do a survey more quickly using a camera. And I already talked a little bit about the ability to find non-LDAR leaks and the ability to find large ghost leaks. So again, these are things that when the TCQ is doing flyovers, these are the types of leaks that they're specifically looking for and will very easily find that you will see with a camera, not necessarily with a TVA. Thoughts, comments? The cons of optical gas imaging program. So surveys is more affected by environmental conditions. So again, wind is a big thing in West Texas and other parts of the country, and there are restrictions as to how high the wind can be, how the wind speed will determine if you can even do a survey. Plus, other things like rain. You do not want to have your $100,000 camera in the rain. Probably don't want to have a $15,000 TVA in the rain either, but this is definitely a more sensitive piece of equipment. The accuracy falls with leaks below 1500 ppm. So again, you're not going to find some of those smaller leaks that you're going to find with the TVA or other analyzer. And it doesn't quantify leaks. Again, I have the question mark there because I know there's quantification solutions. Talked to a number of people about it. I think there are a lot of people that are very confident in the quantification. Others are not. So I'm not able to really comment on it, but it is something where, the quantification piece is certainly debatable. The TVA.
I mean, yes, quantification, ppm.
Right,
Sure.
quantifies in ppm, parts per.
Okay, it's just concentration. Concentration of VOC. Yeah. Right.
Okay, and the con is obviously, so most of these cameras are $80,000 to $100,000, so they're very expensive pieces of equipment. So that's really the other con. But on the flip side, typically with an OGI program, you're going to need less equipment, right? So you have less technicians. So you do not need to necessarily have the same number of cameras that you would have TVAs or other analyzers.
In the heat of the summer too, in West Texas, they will tend to overheat. You'll have to put them in the fire for
Yeah, good point. And then there's the alternative work practice, which is kind of a hybrid of the two. So it's a bi-monthly optical gas imaging survey and an annual method 21. So the only difference really on the OGI side is that you must record the entire survey. So it does take a little bit longer. You definitely need to have a larger SD card in your camera. And it can be a little bit of a pain in the ass, but it's a requirement. But it does allow you then to do, again, it's a cost savings typically because you're not having to have technicians monitoring quarterly. Instead, you're doing bi-monthly surveys plus one annual method 21. So it's definitely a cost savings and the other benefits of the OGI program with the safety. But it's the one downside, in my opinion, somebody that does these is just the requirement to have to record the whole survey itself. Is anybody doing AWP? Sure, Trihydro is doing lots of AWP. A little bit? Yeah. Okay, so just, just showing kind of I'm not sure if I'll be able to play that video. Oh, there we go, it's fine. Yeah, so just showing what the camera, what you're looking at through the camera. So again, through the bottom left picture is one of your high sensitivity modes. It shows the heat differential within the tanks that you're looking at. So in that image, it's not necessarily showing the leak, it's just showing the heat differential. And then as you saw on the video on the right, that's what, again, you see through the one of the other modes on the camera. So typically if I'm doing a camera survey, I'll leave it in high sensitivity mode. You walk around with it, you find what looks to be a leak, and then you can pop it into different modes to really pinpoint it. So the mode that you've got there on the right, it's what is it called? The auto mode. And that's really the mode that will help you to, once you see the cloud, there's a leak, you use that to really pinpoint it to exactly where on a component that leak is.
It looks like high sensitivity mode, you get more noise too, right?
High sensitivity mode, you get more noise, yeah. And yeah, that's a good point. And the other thing is when you're using high sensitivity mode, and this is where the training, the technician, the thermographer training comes in, because you'll be looking at equipment and sometimes you'll see that heat differential and it's dancing around in the pipe. And so you really have to be able to differentiate what is heat differential versus what is actual leak. So that's one of the what comes only with experience really and training is being able to differentiate the two. Any questions on that? Comments? No. Okay, so LDAR monitoring plan. So your requirements of an LDAR monitoring plan, again, you've got to define the methodology that you're using. So whether you're going to go OGI, method 21, based on that, it's going to dictate the frequency of the surveys, and that's got to be documented in your plan. Again, the details of the equipment that you're going to use or that's used to detect the leaks. Procedures and timeframes for identifying and repairing leaks. So again, it's going to depend on whether you're doing upstream or midstream. That's going to really dictate that, right? On the upstream side, it's typically a 30-day time frame, and on the midstream side, it's typically a 515 requirement. And then your specific procedures for conducting surveys. So again, you've got to identify adverse monitoring conditions, procedures, training experience of operator, equipment calibration procedures, which we'll touch on in just a minute. And then your monitoring plan must also include an observation path if you're going with the OGI route. Not a requirement for a Method 21 program because you've got an LDAR database. So your observation plan is basically dictated by your monitoring routes. So that's the primary difference between the two there. Any questions on the LDAR plan? Okay, and here's an example of an observation path. So again, as in your LDAR database, right, you've got routes. So this is basically the equivalent of a route in the LDAR database. So it gives you a start and finish location, and it documents, what equipment is in the program. And you do have to follow that observation path every time you do a survey. So it's consistent for, if you're doing 4 quarterly surveys, you've got to follow that same path each time. Questions on that?
Are you taking surveys from the same location every time?
So the only thing that would change how you do a survey might be the weather conditions. So if you've got a higher wind, then you're going to need to be closer to the equipment. So then you're going to typically not have any differences in the observation path. You might be a little bit closer to the equipment, a little bit further away from the equipment based on wind. And that's dictated by, and we'll get into it, but you do your daily verification check to determine, what your visibility is for that day. Okay. Okay, so I mentioned the daily verification procedure. So this is a requirement of Quad OA. Must be capable of imaging a gas. It's 50% methane, 50% propane at a concentration of 10,000 ppm. It's got to be performed daily and prior to beginning your first survey of the day. And you need to access a local weather app for some weather data that I'll touch on in just a minute. And then also you have to keep a video record of each verification check. Again, just requirements of the reporting, Quad OA reporting. Apologize, I have some issues here. Just go ahead. Okay. So your daily verification procedure. So again, it determines the maximum viewing distance from lens to component. So as I mentioned, in higher winds, you're going to get decreased monitoring distance. So that would determine how far or near you stand while you're doing the survey. You can adjust the observation path in required, but it's got to be documented and reported as just a survey deviation. It's not a huge deal, but you do have to document that. Ensures that equipment is operating as designed in real-time weather conditions. So again, as you're recording your daily verification and the weather data, you've got to document whether it's sunny, cloudy, temperature, barometric pressure, some other factors as well. And there is a suggestion to repeat the verification check if the weather changes significantly in a day. So in West Texas, typically, in the summer, you get out there at 8 a.m., it's going to be 70 degrees. By the end of the day, it could be 95. I don't typically do a second verification check, but if you get out there and you've got zero wind in the morning, and by the end of the day, you're dealing with 25-mile-an-hour winds, that's when you have to, do a second check, because your conditions will have changed fairly significantly. And this is an example of what a verification setup looks like. So you can see on the picture on the right, you do see the gas coming out of the setup. So what you basically do is you start from, say, 10 feet away from your verification setup, and you just backtrack and video the actual event, and then you get to about 25 feet. If you can still see it, 25, 30 feet is typically as far back as I will go. And that's on a very low wind day. And then it's, when you lose visibility to the gas coming out of the verification setup, that's where you've established your limit to how far you can be from the component. This is what we've got just a real basic spreadsheet that we use to, again, this is still part of the daily verification. So what you're trying to do is on the odometer setting on the bottom right-hand corner, that's the the calculation that you've got to get to know how to set up your verification, I guess your calibration on the previous slide. So you plug in data, including the temperature, the barometric pressure, humidity, wind direction, wind speed, cloud covers, basically whether it's sunny, partially cloudy, cloudy, and then precipitation. So typically you're not going to do a camera survey if there's any precipitation, but you know, if it's very light, you know, you still may be able to do it. But this is the information and the record keeping that is required for each survey that you do. Okay, so record keeping on the field documentation side. So you need to obviously have the survey date, the beginning and the end time of the survey, the name and the training / experience of the camera operator, the monitoring instrument used, including the serial number and the model. So if you're using a you know, a FLIR, you've got to call it the FLIR GF320 plus the serial number's got to be documented. Again, the daily instrument check that we already talked about, you've got to document that. Weather conditions, as well as a video and picture records of the instrument of the daily check, and everything's got to be time date stamped per the regulation. Just as a, let's see if I can do this. Trying to show an example of our form that we use. Apologize for the mistake. Okay, so just to give you an example of the form that the report that we put together when we do a survey. So we use a commercially available software, but we record the date, all the weather conditions, whether a verification check was completed, and then we go through and we take a picture of every leak that we find, record whether a first attempt was made, whether that first attempt was successful, and just kind of see an example of how we record it. And then we, you know, technician signature, survey date and time. So everything is, again, time, date stamped on the report. Everything's got a GPS coordinate. And then obviously, as we mentioned, you know, as you're doing the survey, you're recording the leaks on the camera as well. Camera's time, date stamped, so you're capturing all that data twice. So there's no issue with, you know, on the reporting side, the validity of the data. It's a great QC check as well. Any questions? Okay, record keeping continued. So you want to take a photo of the site. Typically, we'll take a picture of the gate sign, again, just as additional documentation that you were at the site, recording ambient temperature, sky conditions, wind speed, any deviations from the monitoring plan. If no deviations, then state that there were none. The number and type of components for all leaks found. Number of and type of DTM and UTM components monitored, and then number of and types of components not repaired as required per the regulation. Continuing on. So location of each leak, a general description, and again, as you saw in the report, and it's also got to be recorded and documented in a report submitted to the EPA. And the location must be taken, so the video and the photos must be taken with the camera as well. And as I mentioned, GPS time date stamped. And if a repair is unsuccessful in the field, then the leaking component must also be tagged, so that and that tag's got to remain on the leaking component until it's repaired. Okay, and the last part of the field documentation is the number and type of leaking components placed on delay of repair with explanation, and then the date of the successful repair and the methodology used to resurvey that leaking component. So I mentioned earlier about the wind and the effect that has on your camera survey. So again, this is an industry standard kind of chart, right? It's not the end all, but it is what most companies will use to determine whether or not they're going to do a camera survey. So typically, any wind over 30 miles an hour, not a great condition, not recommended to do the camera survey. And if you are going to do it, then you've really got to be within 10 feet of the components. So back to the question on the observation path, that's when you're going to be very close to doing the to the component and doing the survey. Okay. So if you're doing a Method 21 program, so this is the information that you're required to keep. So the records of all regulated equipment, type of instrument used, the inspection value measured by Method 21, time date of the inspection, the instrument reading for each leak, and the calibration record. So all of that's going to be captured in your LDAR database. So that's a little bit different from having to capture it outside of a database. From a data management side, so again, do you need a database, right? So, and this is where certainly on the Method 21 side, and again, Michael's our database guru, but I don't think anybody would recommend an LDAR program without an LDAR database for Method 21. So that's certainly a consideration there. On the camera side, we typically will not use an LDAR database unless it's a customer requirement, because you are we have different tracking mechanisms again and reporting mechanisms, and all of that data has to be submitted to the EPA through their Quad Away report. So for the camera side, there's really not a big need for a traditional LDAR database. There are also other Quad Away softwares available that are very good for tracking the information, but again, it's not an absolute requirement for the OGS side.
And each one of the LDAR vendors, LeakOS and Skyware, they're all kind of implementing Quad Away modules. I don't know how mature they are right now, but I think they're aware that there's a change. The data that's being captured, video versus 21 readings, that they're kind of shifting the focus in that direction. Makes sense.
And I know our friends at TriHydro have a good Quad Away data software to track. So I think that your Leak Tracker Pro is yours, right? Yeah. So. Okay, and so again, on the record keeping side for your annual reporting, the EPA did come out with a new, easier to use report. I'll show it in just a moment. So it simplified it a bit, but there is still a lot of data to collect and to capture that's got to be submitted annually. So again, annual report for each collection of fugitive emission components at a well site or compressor station, Initial report due no later than 90 days after the end of the initial compliance period. And then the annual report, again, simplified for 2021, survey dates for each facility, monitoring instrument used, deviations from monitoring plan, number and type of leaks from each survey, number and type of leaks not repaired, and then the details for any and all of your DORs. This is the new Quad-Away report. So the two tabs that, again, we're typically concerned about are the fugitive surveys and the fugitives found. And again, these are the fields, but it's definitely gotten a lot easier to complete these. They're asking for a lot less information than the previous report. So again, you just kind of see some of the information requested. Some of it's pretty basic, and then really the rest of it's just based on the component, and then also a field about the date of the next planned shutdown for any DORs that need to be repaired. So. And as I mentioned to those who were here in the beginning, it's not going to be a 4-hour training. So that's all we've got from kind of running through the information. So I don't know if anybody's got questions or want to just kind of talk about Quad-Away, because I know there's a lot of experience in the room. So anything, any questions, concerns, talk about? Yes.
I wasn't here in the beginning, sorry.
That's okay.
Could we talk about it, because I'm not super familiar with how the bottom goes there. If anyone has any good things to share.
So can you be more, like, what are we talking about? We're talking about gas plant? We're talking about upstream stuff?
Downstream.
So downstream. Okay, and so method 21 program?
Sure, yeah, and anything you got, that's good stuff to know.
That's a little generic. Yeah. So who wants to start? So where are you starting from the beginning with the program? Is it a new facility or?
No, it's not. I just want like a general synopsis. I have time, I figured it out.
In the beginning, no, let's see, where do you want to start? So I guess, so you've got a program in place?
No, we don't. So I want to learn about this. My area of expertise.
Okay, and we're talking about downstream. So tagged and documented? You have a like a?
It's an LDAR program, yeah, but just Quad A, I'm just not as familiar.
Okay, so really, I guess the difference between Quad-Away and other programs is going to be the regulation is going to define your monitoring frequencies, your leak limits, and so again, we can, we're happy to kind of jump back through some of the slides if you really want to go through them. But so again, Quad-Away program will require a 500 ppm leak limit on a pump, but I was going to say VVA, but Quad-Away is based on VVA. So another regulation will require a different leak limit and a different monitoring frequency, for example. So, right. Yeah, different reporting requirements. So what we can do, again, I don't want to keep people that have gone through it. I can start the slides again because, yeah, do we want to go through anything else before, and then we can kind of jump back to the beginning?
How are you guys tracking the plant shutdowns?
So our clients will typically track that and let us know, because, so for example, one of our clients, right, they actually had a fire in one of their facilities. So it's not a shutdown, but, so on about 3 or 4 quarters, right, we weren't doing it. It's finally the facility's back up. So we will start, doing surveys there again in 4th quarter. No, I'm sorry, 3rd quarter next month. So that's one thing, but we really depend on the information coming from the client on the shutdowns. As somebody that's, again, that does this, you're probably in the same position that we are. We're at the mercy of our clients to get that information, right? Because, even without the shutdown, just getting the leak repair dates, the verifications of the repairs, and the DORs specifically at another level of complexity, because, we've, again, number one, the explanation for the DOR, but then also, right when the next planned shutdown is. So it's really just a communication thing. I'll be honest. We don't have a good software-based solution to track the shutdowns because, as you well know, that their dates always change anyway. So I don't know.
The field technician has no idea. when
Right.
that shutdown is.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's that communication, it's tracking it, allocating it.
Right. So I don't know, Marty or Sean, anything?
A lot of just like or in my area, Texas, and they're not necessarily man sites, so the technician's not there 5 days a week. So he doesn't know if trial went down for 3 days, because he wasn't there that 3 days. And then you're depending on an operator, or the reports come up and they're like, oh, yeah, we should. Well, but yeah, it's a challenge. So again, communication, it's just, you have to ask them, you got to put them on the spot, and not, you can't just ask the operator, you really have to go to the plant manager or operations supervisor. Say, hey, what are you planning, the day you're leaving, and the day you get back, did something happen, do I need to know about it? And it helps a lot, and I think they appreciate it, because some of them, they don't understand it. And especially out there, they're pretty cookie books, and they're not really up on it, so they appreciate it as much.
What's the matter with country folks?
Don't take any of this.
I also have a lot of trouble with clients, and I find it helpful to send a DOR report, like quarterly or monthly, and whatever it is, go over the DOR and keep sending it to them on their radar. So,
Time for the shutdown.
So there's a requirement to have the repair and the resurvey done post shutdown. I think it was 30 days. I think it's 30 days. But
So is your question a planned shutdown or like an emergency shutdown?
Like emergency shutdown.
I think
I just don't have a time limit, or it's over like so many hours that
Sean, I think
they don't have to do that.
12 hours.
Yes, typically unplanned shutdowns, they're down longer than 24 hours.
okay, but I'm fine now.
I guess after 24 hours, they're making it a planned shutdown, like you're not.
Yeah,
Right.
planned. They're,
and that one time that you were discussing about the compressors, you said that you have 30 days to repair them, and only your explanation could be shut down or unsafe. And I guess the reason for that is because there is 30 days to repair it, so there shouldn't be any other reason they can't repair it in 30 days.
No, so on the upstream side, right? So typically on the midstream side, you got a 5-15, right? 5 days for the first attempt and 15 for the final repair. On the upstream side, it's different. It's 30 days for any piece of equipment. You still got, and some clients will manage it differently. They'll do more of a 5-15 as well. And some clients, if they've got another regulation laid on top of quad away, there's a more stringent requirement. But so just straight quad away, it's 30 days. But if it goes into DOR, again, it's 30 days. It's additional 30 days post shutdown. So, do I understand the question correctly?
you have to
Monitor 30 days, verification.
Of startup, right,
Okay.
right. So the DOR thing, you can only put a component on DOR because of, either a potential safety issue or if you have to, shut down the whole plant.
Or the emissions thing.
Yeah.
More emissions
Yeah.
involved.
It's rare. But
I mean, the math's not that hard.
Right.
Should not do that.
Comments, questions?
So I've got one. So you were talking about DORs, back to the DORs on your OGI sites and that you have to resurvey it within 30 days. So I know that you have had situations where you actually do that at 21.
Yeah. So
How do you record that? So normally you're recording a picture of this leak fixed or not fixed. Right? So if you have a pipe fitter out there, we can do say, okay, I'm gonna fix them, you find them, and you, okay, here's the leak, okay, here it is repaired. Now you have this DOR and you're long gone. Send somebody out there to let it come. How do you just put it in there?
yeah. So the LDAR monitoring plan will dictate whether. So again, I think for quad away, even Snoop may be an approved method. So just got to have it in your LDAR plan. So OGI, Snoop, or method 21. And so it's just got to be documented. The methodology used to confirm that the leak is repaired, and again, and the date. And then if it's method 21, we've got to record the reading. So that'll be, the equivalent of having a picture in there that shows no leak.
So if you do method 21, you have to have calibration, COAs,
Yes.
equipment number, the whole
Yes.
gamut.
Yep.
You can snoop it, the operator can snoop it, and then you can go back and do a medicine on the next repair.
If it's in your written plan. Hey, Steve.
And so upstream, midstream, downstream, what you're saying is they all have the option to just do OGI and not do method 21.
So midstream, you don't have the option to do straight OGI. You do have the option to do alternative work practice. So again, there's differing opinions on it. Again, it can be a cost savings, but then there are also some other limitations of going that route. So some of our clients have had issues in the past with alternative work practice programs. And so again, not judging whether it's better or worse. It's just really a customer opinion. But on the gas plant side, you can do AWP. So Steve, you mentioned we're not doing a 4-hour training. So I'm sorry that you're coming in on the back end of this. So we have a question in the back. So we're going to kind of do a little restart, or at least have a conversation about quad away. So you're welcome to hang out for that. But talking about quad away for 4 hours would be really, really hard. So I get points for showing up at least, right? I'm playing C. No, wait, he hasn't finished. I might be playing D or E, right?
It was actually D. And I apologize for that, but,
Yeah, you are. But so again, I mean, we're going to we can start from the beginning. Yeah, if you want to hang out and talk about quad away, we'll do it over again. Again, and then if there's other questions or any other feedback, happy to talk about it. But otherwise, I think we'll just kind of restart. So you better have some questions about quad away. All right.
the cost extra, you can do it a second time.
It's all one price, and I think Steve gets enough money out of you. So, all right, gets enough money out of us. Maybe not you. How you been? Good. So who are you with?
Chevron?
Okay, great.
I work in California though, so.
Oh,
like,
sorry.
I know.
It's
It's a rough time.
Yeah,
So like a lot of the federal rules, obviously they apply, but I don't want to say I don't pay good attention to them, because I do, but I don't need to, because our local
Right.
rules are so crazy.
Right.
Right. They're like county rules, right?
We do, yeah, so I work in the Richmond refinery, so the air district there, they require method 21 on everything. And so all connectors, even everything.
Yeah.
So we have like almost 500,000 components that we inspect with method.
yeah, you,
Quarterly connector?
yeah,
No, we do annual, but there are some, like it just depends, like some we will do more frequently than that. Like we did build a new plant recently, and so we'll inspect that one more because we had to have a specific condition for it. So in there, we'll inspect quarterly. It's wild out there.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, got Northern California versus Southern
Yeah,
California.
the Bay Area,
Bay Area was tough.
Yeah.
It's like you don't even need to be looking at federal rules. Bay Area
you really
was
don't,
crazy.
yeah, you really
Yeah.
don't. Like we have all the federal rules in our program, obviously, and so we inspect to fulfill those requirements, but we're doing so much more
Right.
than what they require, so. Like I was interested in this topic just to be like, oh, let's throw another one out
Yeah,
there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it doesn't, we don't really look at quality, but when you said it's based on DVA, then.
Right. So, and do you do much camera, or is it all
So
method
we
21?
have a camera
Yeah.
and we can use it.
Okay.
The air district loves to come out and take pictures of like our LPG spheres and like anything that's gonna give off anything. They came out a while ago and like asked us to make a leak for them, but they could do that, and we were like, no.
Make a leak.
Sure.
No, they want us to like open a couple valves, and we were like, no, we're not gonna. So we opened a jar of like a light egg that we had in it.
Candle maybe.
Yeah, we lit a lighter for them
Yeah,
too.
Right.
Yeah, like, here we go. Yeah, it's, we do have cameras, but we don't use them for.
You have flyovers out there as well?
We do a couple drones, but again, like nothing is used for compliance. Everything is just kind of an extra layer of looking out, and then if the air district brings something, we'll, replicate it just so we can, see what they see.
Right, right.
What's the legal now? 100. Yeah.
On everything?
For connectors and valve, pumps is 5.
Okay.
It's pretty low.
Yeah.
What were you saying?
We used to
Yeah.
work at Torrance. and
Okay.
I think it's that way.
Yeah, they're under the same requirements that we're all under the same air district. So.
Super strict.
Yeah, it's really strict, but I mean,
No DORs.
no, we can't have. yours.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah, we're allowed to, they have to be fixed within 5 years, so I don't know if that's elsewhere, but we are allowed to have those. I don't think South Coast is, so.
Yeah.
So like, also Mondo, the refineries down there, I don't believe they're allowed to have. Is there any other option? I mean, what happens if they can't fix it?
So there's no option.
There's no option.
Trying to check.
Yeah, yeah, if they can't fix it, they can go on the DOR list, but in that turnaround, like, you gotta take it out, you gotta weld it, or you gotta replace it, you have to do something. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a
so
cool place to learn though, because.
Are you
like-
from California?
Yeah. I've only worked in California for Chevron, so I'm pretty used to
Yeah, you're learning the most stringent, right? So everything else will be easier from there.
it. Yes, that's what I'm told.
Yeah.
That's what they tell me.
Right, right. Wow.
Keep going.
Well, good. Welcome to Texas.
Speaking of pumps that have repair, we have a couple of labyrinth seal pumps. You guys familiar with that?
I am not. Labyrinth seal?
Labyrinth seal. Basically, the process of it, the seal, it's a kind of a ball tooth blade exit process moves it out, and it's supposed to harden it.
Oh, that's nice.
But it's, we have, at that point of the process, it's a lot of MCB, so a lot of vapor's coming out. It thins out these little bit, have leak. We've got 2 pumps. I don't know if you order them all. all seals are intended to leak, but my God, it's intended to ooze out.
Well, so by the rule, it's the only thing that's gonna be exempt will count. So just because the style of seal being used is trying to leak, that's pretty, that's pretty tough.
That's,
But real, I mean, got down to the nitty-gritty, every time they replace that seal, it's a new, it's a new seal. But if they're not replacing it, they're just a little thickener in here that clogs it up.
That's my understanding.
Doesn't meet the requirements of the end of the.
No, this is vapor pressure, the private pressure.
yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, that's, again, man, this is,
Never even heard of seal like that.
Yeah. that's why these are, this conference is interesting because we always learn something new every time we come out as well. So it helps us.
I try to talk Trinity. Fire.
But yes.
Yeah, absolutely. They're pretty big ponds. Pretty much right before. To the extreme. They're massive ponds. So, they can see you.
So they're gonna get every bit of life out of them that they can.
They even have them set up for power outage or whatever. Automatic. And you run. They're shut down. Out of the.
Yeah. Okay. All right, well, let's do it again. Okay, so
They're already full.
she's with me, so that's okay. All right, so again, just to kind of restart. So the training is meant to be just a high level overview of elements of a successful quad LDAR program, looking at midstream versus upstream requirements, and really focused on program execution. Okay, what it's not going to be a 4-hour training, despite what it says on the agenda. We're not getting into the detailed quad OA regulation. Back to Steve, your point, right? Trinity, we're gonna come out and do a really good job for you executing a program. We're not gonna we can't tell you exactly what to do with that pump. Thanks very much.
Trinity, they look at it from one side, and you guys are people seeing it from the other side.
Right.
It's in my opinion.
Yeah, and we're going to have an opinion on it, but ultimately, you or you're going to pay somebody like a Trinity or somebody to make that determination of whether it's in the program. And if it's in the program, then we're going to monitor the frequency it needs to be monitored and track it. You know what I mean? But we're just we're not the regulatory experts at a Trinity or a ERM or what I mean. That's what you pay them a lot more money to do than your LDAR contractor. And I know you're doing it in-house still, so right? Yeah. Again, we can definitely have a conversation and we'll give you our opinion on it. It's not a look forward as to the regulations are always changing. Quad OA has there was a rollback on it with the previous administration, and now they've re-implemented some more stringent requirements for it. So for a period of time, The semi-annual requirements were rolled back to annual, and the quarterly were rolled back to semi-annual. Those have since been, reestablished to what the original rule was or is.
Come out originally.
So Quado A was 2015.
Okay, so
Yeah, so Quado and Triple K are the two kind of prior iterations of that rule. And then, so Quado A came out 2015 and it's effective, I think it was 2015, but it definitely affects, it's effective for any equipment or any new facilities, any modifications that happened in 2015 or newer. Does that make sense? And then it pulls in, so like with Quado was still connectors, it was just not methane, right? What the difference between Quado A and Quado is the methane.
Oh, yeah, the leak definition is still saying.
Leak definitions are the same. Right. Pulled in some additional.
Probably GHG requirement.
Right. But yeah, from an equipment standpoint, it's identical to Quado. And the difference between Quado and Triple K is that Quado requires annual monitoring of connectors, whereas Quado does not.
Triple K was 10,000.
Across the board? Okay, so more stringently definitions then. I think I've got the Quado definitions in here. And so again, in Texas, we do a lot of camera work, and a lot of companies will elect to go with camera versus method 21 if it's an option. So again, we're not making an argument for one versus the other. We're just kind of presenting both as options. Okay. So this is kind of, the topics that are on it. So just a little bit on the regulation, differences between midstream and upstream, differences between method 21 and OGI, just some of the information required in the written LDAR plan, and then the record keeping requirements. I'm Jeff, Sean, Marty, Steve, Robert. This is just a little humor for you. This is what we encounter out in West Texas pretty regularly. So the one on the right was my first tarantula. I was so excited because I've been doing the camera surveys out there for a couple of years, and I've been waiting to find a tarantula, and I finally got one last month. Carl, who's not in the room right now, he got the snake on the left. And then the goats were, I think, last year. So that was really interesting. We found a couple of goats. They like the heat of the tanks. So
I worked in Central Valley upstream, so very similar to Texas.
Yeah.
It looked a lot like this.
Yeah.
You get bobcats and
yeah,
all sorts of things.
yeah. I haven't seen a bobcat. I would love to get a bobcat.
Yeah, those are pretty cool. They like to under the tanks. and
Yeah,
shit.
yeah.
Yeah, we find like buried jackrabbits and everything.
Yeah. We get a lot of the jackrabbits, and actually, funny story, one plant that we go to, there's an operator there that feeds the rabbits. So you go, and I mean, he's got, like, first thing in the morning, he's got a group of rabbits hanging out near the operator, the control building, or whatever you want to call it, the little hut. And then we'll be out doing camera work, and they'll follow us around hoping to get fed. So. Okay, so here's some of the information on the regulation. So again, it affects facilities newly constructed as well as modified or reconstructed after that September 2015 date. Okay, obviously the rule itself establishes the emission standards, compliance schedules for the control of greenhouse gases, and kind of the list of equipment that it was affected, right? I think that's probably, you're certainly familiar with that. Any questions on anything on there? So the equipment list, again, valves, connectors, PRVs, OELs, flanges, compressors, instruments, meters, and then thief hatches and other closed vent, other covers on closed vent systems. So again, kind of the general requirements. So the Quad OA monitoring frequencies, monthly pumps, quarterly valves, annual flanges and connectors. The repair requirements, so 5-day first attempts, 15-day repairs. Again, that's same as VBA. And then delay of repair is allowed if a repair cannot be made safely or without a shutdown.
Maximum time that can be on that?
For the actual shutdown itself?
No, just for how long it can be the DOR list.
I don't think so, right? No, not.
Like, can it be on there forever?
They don't have a strict pipe down,
Yeah.
but the pipe down is harder than get moved, but, one away, I've got stuff that's been.
On DOR for a long time.
Yeah,
Do you have to periodically test?
we check monthly.
You do, okay.
DORs, if it's on DOR, we check a monthly, regardless if it's connector, valve, pump.
Is there a maximum leak that it can have? Oh, and where I work, you can't put it on the DOR list if it's gonna, I think it's gonna emit more than 5 pounds per day.
Oh,
So if it's over 10,000 ppm, you can bag it and test it, and if it's over that, then you can't keep it on DOR, and you have to.
Yeah, what do you use to bag it? The high flow?
You know, I don't know, we hire, I've never actually done it, we hire external.
Okay,
companies.
contractor.
you're talking about taking a sample of it?
Mhm, yeah.
They can go in there with a.
High flow samplers.
Yeah, I'm not sure, I haven't seen it done yet, but yeah, that's.
Okay, so on the midstream side, the requirements for valves must be monitored within 30 days after the end of the startup period. New valves must be monitored for 2 consecutive months before they go onto a quarterly frequency.
This is like identical,
Yeah, to get right, pretty much.
did you, I didn't write it down, you said the difference between triple K and Quado, was that Quado included connectors? Is that right?
Quado includes connectors, and then also on the leak definition. So,
Definition and THC.
well, so for quad, right? So just Quado versus triple K. It's the leak definitions and the addition of connectors.
Okay, and the difference between Quado and Quado A was.
Is pulling in methane. Yeah. Mhm. And I'm trying to see. I think there was also some additions on the upstream side, like pulling in some additional equipment. Compressor stations were subject to Quado. I think, yeah, maybe it was the well sites and compressor stations that got pulled in under Quado A. I think it was. Right? Does that sound right to you? I think it was.
I was on the edge and being things like this.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it was pulling in the compressor stations and on the upstream stuff on the Quado A side. Okay, is that 3% consistent with you as well on the DTMs? Yeah. More than 3%?
Yeah, it's less, but
Is it like a requirement is less?
yeah, the. That way, but it's fucking 3%.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, ours is as well. Okay, for pumps, same thing, just the leak definition is 2,000 ppm on pumps. And then again, back to the conversation with Steve, you know, the only exemption is on those dual mechanical seal pumps that we deal with at least. What was the pump that you? Labyrinth. Okay. So look at that. Okay. Okay. And then additional requirements for Quad OA: initial inspection on CVS components, and then visual thereafter, annual visual requirement. Each sampling system equipped with a closed purge, closed loop, or closed vent system, except in vacuum service. Open-end lines need to be equipped with a cap, blind flange plug, or second valve, except in vacuum service. Heavy liquid component leaks must be fixed no later than 15 days, or eliminated is the term they use. And then
November 21 and 5 days.
no, there is, for the heavy liquids. Well, they're not, the heavy liquids aren't in the program. Is it just if you have like a visual or yeah, so if you put it in.
Put it in as an ABO thing. And something else that we learned about the OEL. Not water, clean air.
No, yeah.
That's something around it, we can use. We have to try to use it. That's you talk to your operators, because that's not us. We don't even go in that. That was now we're doing visual. But yeah, if you have somebody turn it in, that's what we do.
And then I think this is VBA as well, right? So valves, connectors, pumps that are on DOR, if they're monitored 2 consecutive months without a leak or below the leak definition, then they're considered repaired. Okay, on the upstream side, fugitive emission is any visible emission from a fugitive emissions component observed using an OGI. So if you're using camera, you see a leak, it's a leak. If you're doing method 21, then it's 500 ppm. And then on the component, so any component that has potential to emit of methane or VOC at a well site or compressor station, including but not limited to valves, connectors, PRDs, open-end lines, flanges. So these are just all the, again, the components that are considered FE, in the program. And then devices that vent as part of normal operation, such as pneumatic controllers, natural gas driven pumps, are not fugitive emission components insofar as the natural gas discharge from the device's vent is not considered a fugitive emission. And then emissions originating from other than the vent, such as the thief hatch on a controlled storage vessel, would be considered fugitive emissions. Any questions on that? Okay. So kind of back to the frequency. So well sites, semi-annual inspections again. So again, these are the well sites were previously semi-annual, dropped down to annual for a period of time, and now they're back to semi-annual. Compressor stations are back to quarterly. The surveys must be conducted at least 60 days apart. So if you do a survey in March, can't do it again in April. Same thing with the well sites. You just got to keep them separated by at least 4 months. Repairs made within 30 days. Surveyed within the 30 days. And then again, the DOR is only allowed if repair is infeasible due to or infeasible or unsafe without a shutdown. So again, no parts not available is not a valid excuse or a valid reason. What are some of the other ones that we get requested about. That's the primary one, yeah. I don't have the part, yeah, so. Okay,
So if you run across, I don't want to have multiple compressors.
a single compressor, oh yeah.
Can't just lock it in, shut it off, fix it. Back up and have it go. How to deal with it. Because it's their choice.
It's exactly.
It's not for us.
I can't tell them, right, I can disagree with them, but I can't tell them that they have to do it, right? If the operations group signs off on it, that's what I do. I don't agree with it, but yeah. They're typically pretty good. And even if a compressor is down, with the camera, we'll survey, right? Because it's still, even though it's down, it's still technically in service, right? It's not purged. It's not, if the compressor's sitting there, we still have to survey it. But, and then we typically don't find leaks on those, if they're not running. Any questions on this one?
Consider fracturing or modification to a well. Like if you drill the well and you go back in later, even though it's underground.
Right. Yeah, the second one, yeah. So again, not that's what the regulation says. So yeah, I don't, it's already under quad-away, so it's not going to trigger a more stringent regulation. But yeah, I guess that is what would be considered a modification. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, then it gets put into the program. Right, exactly.
What are they called out? Hydraulic fracture.
Yeah.
Why is it in?
I don't know. That's a
Well,
good, yeah.
So my understanding, and I'm not really up to that, but my nephew works at, and so the fraction basically both know, and now the hydraulic is, there's pros and cons to it, more controllable. And so that's why everyone's kind of focused on hydraulic, but a lot of the market is hydraulic. So that's my.
But I don't think we see anything, at least where we work, that's not hydraulic. That's one, yeah. So that's a fair point. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. On the upstream side, compressor station is a site that has any permanent combination of one or more compressors that move natural gas at increased pressure through gathering or transmission pipelines or into or out of storage. And in other words, gathering, boosting stations, transmission station, storage. And the modifications apply when an additional compressor is installed at a compressor station. One or more compressors are replaced by compressors with greater horsepower. So if it's replaced by a like compressor, then that would not be considered a modification. Questions there? So kind of, evaluating the method 21 versus using the camera. There's a lot of factors, but one of them is what we'll call effectiveness versus efficiency. So again, on the method 21 side, you're contractor, I'm guessing, is using the TVA 2020s or maybe the Phoenix 42. With the analyzer, right, it can read 500 ppm leaks, so that's one benefit to it. Whereas the camera's not going to typically see a camera that, leak that low, that small. So on the pro side for Method 21, it provides the real-time ppm readings, the leak concentrations. It's able to detect smaller leaks. Your TVA is typically going to cost about $15,000 versus a camera, which is going to be close to 100. So definitely a cost savings, at least on a per unit basis. You'll typically need less cameras than analyzers. So there is a trade-off in that sense. And then a survey done, a Method 21 survey is going to be less affected by environmental conditions. Wind is really the big one, but maybe rain as well. Very light rain, may still be able to do some Method 21 versus camera. We're not going to put a camera out there in the rain. Cons of Method 21, increased time on tools. So it does take longer to do a Method 21 survey than it would to do a camera survey of the same facility. Cons as well on the Method 21 side is that you're only looking at LDAR components, and talked about this a little earlier, was, with the camera, you're going to survey the whole facility. You're going to typically step back and kind of look at the whole facility with the camera. So you're going to catch some non-LDAR leaks with the camera that you would not with Method 21. Because again, you're only going from valve to connector to pump to those components in there. So we do catch a number of non-LDAR leaks when we're doing camera surveys. And so while they're not necessarily captured in the program, our customers are typically very thankful because we catch some big leaks, and some that can be, fuel gas line is a big one that we catch a lot on compressors and can lead to a lot of damage to the compressor if not fixed. So there's a benefit to the camera. Again, typically with Method 21, you'll capture more leaks because you're capturing smaller leaks. But there's also health considerations with Method 21 because you have to get closer to the equipment to use the analyzer. And so there's health and safety considerations there. Camera side, again, there's a number of handheld cameras out there now. Some of them are more effective than others. We typically use the FLIR GF series. OpGal's got a good camera as well, and there are, again, some other options available today. Again, we mentioned earlier, there's no defined leak threshold, so a leak is when you can see it with the camera. So on the pro side of OGI, so again, from a safety standpoint, you can usually be further back doing a camera survey. Again, that will be a little bit dependent on what the weather dictates, the wind. But again, it is typically a safer survey to do than using a TVA or an analyzer. Ability to find non-LDAR leaks, ability to find those large ghost leaks. Again, sometimes a client will ask us just to come out and do a survey because they're expecting a flyover. So again, that could be West Texas, but actually this week, one of our clients actually asked us to come out and just do a quick survey because she knows that the TCQ is going to be out there either later this week or next. They want to know what the TCQ is going to see before the TCQ sees it. So cons on the OGI side, a survey is more affected by environmental conditions. So we won't do a camera survey if the minimum or if we get a wind reading of 30 miles an hour. So it's just, or I'm sorry, greater than 30 miles an hour. It's just, you're not going to get an effective survey because that wind speed is just too much. Cons of the camera side is, again, it's, the accuracy falls with smaller leaks, typically below 1500 ppm. The quantification piece is kind of a gray area. I've not So the solutions that I've seen in the quantification area, they seem a little bit difficult to, or a lot of work to quantify them, but I know FLIR and others, I believe, oh goodness, what's the name? Providence Photonics, right? They've got some really nice solutions out there, and they claim to be able to quantify. I can't say that they don't, but I also haven't used it myself. So, it's kind of still up in the air as to the accuracy of that, I believe. And then get back to just very expensive equipment. Okay, and then there's also the alternative work plan. Guessing that's not an option in California. So, but it's kind of a hybrid between your OGI program and Method 21. So it's bi-monthly camera surveys and then one annual Method 21. The big difference between the alternative work practice and a quad OA camera program is that you've got to record the entire survey under the alternative work practice. So under quad OA, you just have to record leaks. Under alternative work practice, you've got to record the whole 3-4 hour survey or whatever it takes. So just an additional level of reporting that's required for it. It's also, it's a lot of not a lot, but it's additional work and additional time that it takes for the camera operator. That's correct. Yeah. Yep. Probably not.
Because it's kind of a problem with the software is a component based. So if this is really kind of a blank survey, that would kind of challenge. I'd be very interested to hear. I'm sure we'll talk about it here. Other plans to move it. Chateau. Yeah, and I think Ivor had a lot.
Yeah. So just a couple of images, from the camera. So the tanks on the bottom left, it's really just, that's more of the temperature differential. So it's not showing leaks there, but it's just kind of cool how it shows, the difference in temperature, the product versus the empty portion of the tanks. And then on the right, that was just if you saw just an example of what the leaks look like through the camera. So typically I will use what's called high sensitivity mode to identify or at least find the leaks, and then move over to that kind of more sensitive mode. It's called auto mode, but that'll help to pinpoint the leak on the actual component. The LDAR monitoring plan. So again, quad OA requirements. So you've got in the monitoring plan itself, you must identify the LDAR methodology. So whether it's going to be a camera program or Method 21, frequency of surveys, the details of the equipment. So you've got to, is again a FLIR camera or a OpGal camera or a TVA 2020. Procedures and time frames for identifying and repairing leaks, and then specific procedures for conducting the leaks themselves. For conducting the surveys themselves. And if you're doing a camera program, you need to include a site map with a defined observation. So if you're doing a Method 21 LDAR program, you've got monitoring routes that are established in a database, so you don't have to do a separate observation path that's specific to the camera program. And that's an example of an observation path. So it defines a survey route. It documents the start and finish locations for the survey, and it also documents, shows all the equipment on the plot plan itself that is in the program and needs to be surveyed.
Are those submitted as part of a report?
Yeah, they're submitted with the I believe they're submitted on an annual basis with the Quad OA report, but it's definitely part, part of the monitoring plan itself, and it can be, certainly can be requested as backup. I'm trying to think of what customers have to, with the Quad OA report, there's a number of other documents, and I believe the observation path is part of what needs to be submitted.
They come back and say, like that path, or?
They can, yeah, and so, and if somebody's got a better plan for a path for us, we're fine with it. But it's really the consistency part. So again, when you're doing an LDAR program in a database, you've got defined monitoring routes, and you've got, it's really just a way for them to ensure that every piece of equipment is being surveyed. So that's really what they're looking for. I don't think they're going to have an issue with how the observation path goes, as long as everything is within the observation path. So daily, part of the requirement for Quad OA is, again, a daily verification of the camera itself. So it's basically the calibration procedure to make sure that the camera itself is finding leaks. So before you start a survey, and I'll show you a quick video of it or a picture of it, but got to calibrate or validate the camera. It's not it's not like a precision calibration. It's really just more of a daily verification check. Do it before beginning any surveys for that day. There's some weather that you need to access in order to set up the verification data correctly, and I'll show that in just a moment as well. And then got to record a video of each verification check as part of the the reporting requirements for that day's survey. So the purpose of the verification check is to determine the maximum viewing distance from the lens to the component. So again, if there's 30 miles an hour wind, then that's going to limit how far away you can be from a component and effectively see a leak. So for example, and we've got a little chart, but if it's 30 miles an hour, which is the maximum I would do a survey in, you'd need to be within 10 feet of the equipment that you're surveying. It functions, so the verification functions as a tool when reviewing the observation path. So again, you can adjust the observation path if required based on the weather. So if you do that, then you need to record that as a deviation from your observation path. Again, it's not a bad thing, it just needs to be recorded. So again, when you look at the observation path, that path may be based on being 20 feet away from the equipment. And if on a given day, because of wind, you need to be within 10 feet, it may just, you may deviate from that plan just a little bit because you got to get in closer to the equipment. You may have to, just kind of veer off just a little bit. But so it's not a bad thing, just needs to be recorded as a deviation from the observation path. And the only time, so, you typically will only have to do it once a day if there's a significant change in the weather. So if, again, there's no wind in the morning and then it's blowing at 30 in the afternoon, or it's gone from bright sunshine to very overcast, then it is recommended, not required, but recommended to do a second verification just to, validate that the camera's still reading the gas and kind of reestablishing the distance between the lens and the component. Just an example of daily verification setup. There's a little rotometer that you regulate the gas coming out based on some weather data that'll show you. Just take a quick video of the gas coming out as verification that you can see the gas. And then, typically I'll start 10 feet away and then back up to a point where, as long as you can still see the gas, then it's considered good, right? So But again, typically won't go more than 30 feet back, regardless, just because that's kind of the established limit is 30 feet away, or at least kind of the rule of thumb. But again, that can be affected by weather conditions as well.
So on a dead calm day, it's 30 feet.
And on a 30 mile an hour day, it's going to be 10 feet. Yeah.
And you turn on wind speed.
I mean, a couple things. Either have we have anemometers with all of our cameras. Yeah, little handhelds, or you can go use your smartphone, and there's local weather apps to pull that down. So this is the information, the data required. You know, we've got just a little spreadsheet set up with some calculations, and then at the bottom, that's where you get the setting for the rotometer for doing your verification. So so it does require just a little bit of, in addition to the wind speed, humidity, barometric pressure. So, but pretty basic stuff. But that's just, again, something that needs to be submitted with the survey information to at least the client, and I believe it needs to go to the EPA as part of their waterway reporting as well. From a field documentation side, this is the information required for doing the survey. So again, the date, the beginning and end time of the survey, name, as well as the training or the experience of the camera operator, the type of camera used in addition to the serial number of the camera used, and then the daily instrument check information that we just kind of ran through. In addition, I don't know that it's a quad-away requirement, but we typically will also record just so, you know, we've got proof that we've been there. We'll take a picture of the gate sign, as well as a time date stamp picture that we include with our report. That includes GPS coordinates as well. And we also, again, we talked about recording all the weather information, deviations from the monitoring plan, and then obviously the leaking information is recorded as well. And so this is just this is the report that we will typically gather for our customers. So we just use it's software that we modified to our own, but you know, you can see it's got location, time, date, stamp, GPS coordinates. Then we record weather data, just confirming that the verification was completed, and then we take pictures of all the leaks, in addition to taking the pictures and the videos on the camera itself. But this is just a nice, easy report to submit, almost real time once we're done with the survey, so that gives operations the ability to jump right on these leaks, right? Because again, you've got the 5-day initial repair attempt, so you know, typically they'll want every bit of those 5 days. So information we record and submit as part of our surveys. And then those pictures are actually taken with our phones. Yeah, but we're also taking pictures with the camera. Yeah, yep.
I saw that you're using the GR, which isn't intrinsically safe. So do you get a comfort permit or?
So the GF300 and the GF320 are not intrinsically safe. So some sites will require the hot work permits. They do have a GFX 320 as well, which I'm going to use my air quotations. It's intrinsically safe.
It just has a screw over the battery.
Yeah, it's right. So it's got a little bit more protection, but you know, even if you talk to the FLIR guys, it's really how you define intrinsically safe. So it's got additional certifications. So
it's not class 1.
Correct. Okay, so then, yeah, just again, additional field documentation. So using the camera, taking a video as well as a picture that's time date stamped, as well as it's got the GPS location. And if a repair is unsuccessful, then the leaking component's got to be tagged in the field, and I think that's pretty typical again of any LDAR program. But and the tag stays there till the repair is made. And then, so the information on any component placed on DOR with an explanation again, whether it's due to unsafe or infeasible without a unit shutdown, and a date of the successful repair and the methodology used to resurvey. So again, QuadOA can resurvey using Snoop, camera, or Method 21. So just kind of back to the wind issue, I guess we'll call it. So, if you look, again, 30 feet, and this isn't, this is not a QuadOA. This is just more of an industry, kind of standard in terms of the distance. But if it's 30 miles an hour winds, you definitely don't want to be any further out surveying than 10 feet. And lastly, on the field documentation side, so on the Method 21, right? In Method 21, everything's recorded in the database versus doing some kind of a alternate report and tracking mechanism. So, record of all regulated equipment, type of instrument, calibration records, the inspection, the PPM reading, inspection value, whatever you want to call it, time date, and then the instrument reading for the leak. So that's all recorded in the database on the Method 21 side. And then for record keeping, I think there is some debate on whether a database is required, certainly on a Method 21 program, databases on a camera program. To Steve's point earlier, there are some people that use it. Chateau is actually one that is fairly commonly used, I would say, on the OGI space now. And then we know that the Guidewire and even LeakDOS are doing more to address this space. Trihydro's got a pretty good QuadOA software called Leak Tracker Pro. So there are some good record keeping. They are expensive. So that's the downside to it. And last slide, reporting. So again, annual report. So just recently, actually earlier this year, EPA simplified the QuadOA report a little bit. So it's actually requires less information than it did previously, but there's still a good amount of detail required. Survey dates, monitoring instrument used, any deviations, DOR details, and then obviously your leaker information. And then any deviations from the monitoring plan that we talked about earlier. So this is the new QuadOA report. A lot of tabs that don't apply to LDAR or FE, whatever you want to call it. But
So we're reading this.
excuse me, the client's required to complete this. We will do certain tabs, these two tabs for certain customers, but that we provide them all the information. Thanks, Marty. You could hear that.
He's joking over here.
I appreciate it, man. But yeah, all of the information that they need to complete those two tabs comes from us. So. That's all I got. Hey,
Thank you.
yeah, no problem. Appreciate you sitting in. Any,
Yeah, I really like it.
yeah, no, so, yeah. Now we want to do it again? No. Yep. Any questions or comments, feedback from everybody? I appreciate y'all joining. So, any thoughts? And no?
I can tell that you lost some of your enthusiasm on the second time.
I didn't lose my enthusiasm. Definitely didn't lose my enthusiasm.
It's just a little bit in the middle, you're like,
Lost his voice, he's not- he's-
Yeah, that's my boy. I'll give you that. Mhm.
program.
And Michael, come on, man, nerd speak. Let's go.
All right, I just first part of the question. There's, monitoring the LDAR program, there's a lot of pretty good standards, WECOS, probably the biggest one. They have a cloud product now called Hybrid that I think kind of tailor fit to this environment because it's decentralized, right? Not to worry about technology and infrastructure. With DOS, you're expected to kind of host that on-prem. You're kind of expected to maintain the database size, all the servers, Guideware, not so much. Even Guideware, they kind of host theirs a little. But that's kind of the direction everyone's going for cloud-based software. It has its drawbacks for sure. I would say accessibility, which I know sounds funny, cloud-based, but they basically took WeDOS and made it a cloud product. So the issues that you deal with, and I say issues, it's really if you're going through major documenting projects, kind of manipulating some of that data that comes down from the cloud. They use cloud stuff.
A lot of people already have.
Yeah.
Yeah, environmental health. Conference. Or, app that it would. It also.
Yeah. I know that they have done a lot with SAP integration in the past. Not exactly sure where they're at with that. That's something that they got asked for years. We actually had a customer on SAP integration with LeapDOS and kind of said, well, we're not really doing anything with that. So we worked with them and their technology people to use database triggers. If I have a leak, winds up in the work request table, that triggers my SAP tables. So I guess it's really just depends on how new technology. I know in the Skybridge cloud sector, I think that is something that we're working on. But the challenges that they face, it's hosted in Microsoft's Azure, so they have a lot of